Waiting for the on-air indication. All right. We're going to call to order the City of Sherwood Planning Commission meeting for April 26, 2022. Before we do our roll call, I would like to introduce our new planning commissioner. To my left is Teresa Montalvo. If you'd like to keep your speech under 30 minutes, that would be great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. We've been in Sherwood since 2013. I'm a professional planner by trade. Been doing that for about 20 years, most recently with the City of Portland Bureau of Transportation. But this is my first chance to be on this side, and I'm real excited to do that. So thank you.
Thank you very much and welcome this evening. So we can now have our official roll call.
Chair Simpson,
Here.
Vice Chair Kai,
Here.
Commissioner Widola,
Present.
Commissioner Lampros,
Present.
and Commissioner Montalvo.
Here.
And Commissioner Vance is absent.
All right, thank you very much. On the consent agenda this evening, we have the approval of the March 22nd regular meeting minutes and the April 12th work session and regular meeting minutes. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Council liaison announcements. Councilor Giles?
Yes, hello, Commission. Thank you for the time. Sorry I couldn't join you in person. I had a tight schedule tonight with a couple of competing priorities. So the council, if you didn't see the council meeting, we got through the first reading of the proposed options for or housing options for middle housing. We're still, there was a little bit of a discussion back and forth and some questions that were asked to staff, and it was continued, I believe, for a couple of weeks now. And we've also got, let's see, one other announcement was that there was there was a Trashapalooza pickup day on Saturday that was very well attended. So hopefully the city that we're planning for is a little bit cleaner than it was previously. I saw probably maybe 100 or more people there. So thank you to everybody who participated in that. And then also we have a additional opportunity to meet with our police force this Saturday. That will be a combination. It will be called Coffee with the Force. And you're going to have Star Wars characters as well as members of our Sherwood Police Department there at the Sherwood Dutch Bros location on Saturday from I think 10 to 1. So just get the community out. And again, welcome also to the new commissioner. Thank you very much for your service and for the amount of reading you're about to do.
All right. Any other, so those are your announcements for this evening, right? We're good?
That's it.
All right. All right. Thank you very much for zooming in. All right, staff announcements?
Good evening, Commissioners. Just one quick announcement, and that is the next regular scheduled Planning Commission meeting will be held on May 10th. And currently, we only have one public hearing scheduled for that evening.
All right. That was easy. Almost painless. All right, community comments. Community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda. And I'm being handed some blue cards so that I can facilitate this. Okay, thank you. Yep, I can do that. So for under community comments, Jim Claus. And then when you come up, I see the red lights still on the microphone, so you're going to have to hold the button down till it turns green so that the the amplifier will pick you up. And then time is limited to 4 minutes, so we'll have staff. Yep, there you go. Sometimes you have to hold it a couple seconds.
I'm going to hand out something to you tonight because you're going into new water and you're finally getting into the water I know real well. And we will, in all likelihood, litigate. Now, I got into litigation like this once before and finally said to the Fish and Wildlife and the other people advising me that I wanted to jail the guy responsible for it. They said, "What do you mean, Jim?" I said, "Well, most people read American history differently than I do. When we read it, we had the Alien Decision Act. We had the Abrams case that prevented the First Amendment, and I wrote a code that the American Civil Liberties Union picked up on to protect our rights that had not been protected before that. Ted Olson later became the Attorney General. So he pretty much agreed with it. And from that, we were able to sue citizens that got out of hand under the Tucker Act and Title 42 U.S.C. 1983 and 84. Now you say, why? Well, because in a democracy, everybody should be responsible if they break the law. If they sit there and they're told you're breaking the law and they've got the proof right in front of them, a contract date that's signed and it's different than somebody saying, why shouldn't they be online? Now, previously in this town, we got away with libeling and slandering Bill Middleton, and the county city insurance picked up the some $1 million that we had to pay because the city manager and the assistant city manager thought they were above the law. I really wished they'd had to pay it personally. And there are cities that are looking to do that, particularly as they're seeing how egregious some of this is. And what I'm telling you is that you're getting into very deep water now. The enabling statute says you can promote and protect public safety, health, welfare, morals, and occasionally aesthetics. You can't sell zoning. That's a restraint against alienation or a shift on selling property, and you're very rapidly moving into that area. Tonight, you're going to get a whole group of materials that you can read, but the point is, I'd read them carefully, because people are saying things as if they think they're true, and I'm telling you, I've had a couple of attorneys look at this and say, where did this come from? And the reason I'm cautioning you is because I think it's wonderful that you're up there. I think it's wonderful Mayor Mays is up there. I'd also think it's wonderful I can haul him into court. I just finished with a bank, and it took a long time to get there. But when we got there, they said, you know, you were just trying to make us pay by the rules. I said, that's right. It's got nothing to do with the fact I went to Berkeley with the person that regulates you. But I said, I don't like it when you think you can break the law. And I don't like it when you stretch the rules. And luckily, we've cleared ourselves financially, and that's the matter I'm going to be pursuing, is personal responsibility for remarks like, you don't like Chinese people. I don't think I have to take that kind of remark. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one other person for community comments, Susan Claus.
Susan Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. I just wanted to alert you to the fact, and maybe it's just a staff thing, or maybe Planning Commission can help the staff, but the wording that you have on the way that you're announcing the meetings now, I think somebody needs to take a look at it. Primarily, it's not electronically done now. It used to be exclusively electronically. Now you can show up to the meeting. It looks like when you first read the top part of your notice, up at the top here, it says it will be electronically done. So if somebody doesn't read through the whole thing, they don't realize that they can come. And I'm just saying that now we're in a different, we're post-COVID. Let's take a look at this because it also said that you've got to do everything 24 hours in advance. I don't even know what that rule was about anyway, but the whole point of coming to a public hearing is you've got to be able to listen to what is being presented. How do you know what you're going to say 24 hours in advance? Some of the stuff you might know, but you can't know everything, and new things come up at the public hearing. So please, I'm encouraging staff, Planning Commission, please look over what this is and make it so it's friendly to the community to show up anytime they want, either on community comments, because we're even saying on community comments that you got to put that 24 hours in advance. Are you kidding me? We've never done that in Sherwood. We've always been a friendly place. You come up and you say your piece, whatever it is, it's not on the agenda, you have a concern, and you get it handled. A lot of times the staff ends up handling it. It's just something that we have to have that openness in the community, and I'm saying that I don't think that the intent was to shut the community down from the appointed and elected officials. I don't think it was that at all. So if we could please do this, take care of this. And additionally too, when you talk about the ADA accommodations, it says please give at least 48 hours in advance. Well, if we're meeting on Tuesday, it's tricky. You're talking about you have until Sunday, nobody's here on Sunday. And really, Colleen was great because I didn't even know there was a 48-hour advance thing. I mean, normally for our public hearings, we're pretty set. And I'm just saying that the way this reads here, if somebody's got an ADA thing and they didn't hit the 48-hour mark, they're saying, what am I going to go for? I'm not even going to be accommodated because I didn't hit their arbitrary number of so many hours of giving notice. And it didn't happen here. Thank you. I didn't think it would happen, but I'm just saying this is super aggressive against like normal everyday Sherwood person trying to come in, not knowing what the rules are, not knowing what the regulations are, taking this at face value. And so please, if we could make this friendly, make it open, make it welcoming, so everybody knows that they can come back down to City Hall again. I appreciate it.
Excellent, thank you. So thank you for your comments this evening. And since this was not noticed for any discussion that we would have, we are going to have this passed to the staff member to look at the items that are at the top and for the handout that was presented to us before the meeting. All right. We have no more community comments. We're going to go on to public hearings. All right. I have a script to read, which carefully put someplace safe. All right. The public hearing on LU 2022-004 MM Major Modification to Site Plan Sentinel Storage 2 is now called to order. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report, questions, if any, by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. The applicant will have 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each. Then we will allow the rebuttal from the applicant, which is the remainder of their 30 minutes. Then no other testimony will be taken from the public or applicant unless the public testimony period is reopened. There'll be final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the commission, and then deliberation by the commission. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. Staff will recognize people who have signed up to speak 24 hours in advance if they wish to testify virtually. When it is their time to provide testimony, they will state their name and address for the record. If you are in the audience this evening and wish to speak, please fill out one of the blue testimony forms and submit it to the planning staff. The chair will recognize people who wish to speak. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record. Any questions should be addressed through the chair. In reaching a decision on the application, the commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. The staff report is available online and at City Hall. The staff report was accessible to the public 7 days prior to this meeting. The testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again with enough detail to allow the commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. And as this is a quasi-judicial hearing, the Planning Commission is the final authority for this hearing, and any appeal would be to the City Council. At this time, I would like to ask members of the Commission to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing.
None.
The only previous ex parte contact I've had are on the record for previous hearings that I would have participated in, which I don't think qualifies. All right. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any Planning Commission member's ability to participate this evening? You wish to challenge? So the audience member has stated that he challenges my ability to participate and impartially, that he's claiming I have ex parte contact to Mayor Mays, which I have not communicated with Mayor Mays on this matter at all. So I do restate for the record that I have not communicated with Mayor Mays on this item, and that I do intend to participate this evening. Any other comments? All right, planning staff will now present the staff report.
Good evening, Chair Simpson and planning commissioners. Very happy to be with you, in person. It's been a long time on the screen, so good to see you all in person and to be giving the staff presentation in person for our second meeting here. So happy to be giving the presentation on LU 2022-004MM for Sentinel Storage, a site plan major modification. The applicant is requesting approval of a type 4 major modification to an approved site plan for a new 3-story self-storage building located at 21900 Southwest Langer Farms Parkway. The application's being processed as a Type 4 land use application with the Planning Commission as the decision authority. As Chair Simpson mentioned, any appeal would go to City Council. The application was routed to affected agencies on April 4th, 2022. Public notice of the application was provided in accordance with City Code, including mailed notice to property owners within 1,000 feet of the site. We did receive one public comment on the application in the record so far. I'll go over that in just a second. And we will be accepting public testimony during tonight's hearing. Application timeline, if we do get a request for a continuance or Planning Commission feels like one is needed or one from the applicant, the staff recommendation based on the 120-day deadline would be to continue to a date certain of 2 weeks from today until May 10th, which would allow us to get to a City Council hearing within the 120-day deadline. This slide shows the applicable criteria. I know we have a few new planning commissioners, and I should have said welcome to both of you, Commissioner Lampros and Commissioner Montalvo. Happy to have you both here. And this is, I believe, the first what we call quasi-judicial land use application in front of you. So just really briefly, the way that these decisions work is the application is weighed against the applicable criteria. And so, really your role tonight is just a judgment of whether the application complies with the applicable criteria. And the staff report goes over, lists all of the criteria in detail and has a finding response to that. If there is a criteria or a standard that hasn't been met through the application, then if it's reasonable, we can place a condition of approval that the application comply after the land use approval, but before final site plan approval. So really pretty simple. We just look at the application versus the approval criteria and either approve or deny the application based on that. So that's your role this evening. We can answer more questions on that if we need to. And just a little bit more detail about the process here. So this is for a major modification to an approved site plan. So the applicant and the site has already received land use approval for a self-storage building. And so the request tonight is for what we call a major modification to that original approval. The original approval was in 2016. And so the reason we're looking at a major modification as opposed to a minor modification is because the proposal is an increase in the floor area by more than 10%. So that kicks it into a major modification as opposed to a minor. And then in terms of the scope of the review and the applicable criteria, the major modification criteria states that the scope of the review is limited to the modification request and does not open up the entire site for additional review unless impacted by the proposed modification. So, for example, in this modification, there's no change to landscaping. There's a hardscape and a building, and they're proposing to replace an existing covered area with a new building, but no change to landscaping as part of the modification. And so the landscaping criteria would not apply to the modification. So we're just looking at the areas of the site that are impacted by the modification. Here's the site. It's located on Langer Farms Parkway. It's approximately 6.14 acres. The site is currently fully developed as an RV and self-storage facility, including buildings, drive aisles, utilities, and landscaping. Here is the existing RV covered storage that is proposed to be replaced with the self-storage building there on the site, but you can see the rest of the site has already been fully developed with self-storage uses. The adjacent roadway is Langer Farms Parkway. It's been fully developed to a 3-lane collector status roadway to city standards. In terms of the zoning and surrounding land uses, the zoning on the property is light industrial PUD, or light industrial planned unit development. Go over details of that in just a second. Surrounding land uses to the north is the Langer Fun Center, which was recently constructed. To the east is a wetland and additional self-storage and RV storage. To the south is a multi-tenant industrial building, and to the west is St. Francis School, and here just slightly to the north is a residential subdivision. Just a little bit of history. I think the other unique thing about this application and about this proposal is that the site is included as part of the Sherwood Village planned unit development. So just a little tiny background on PUDs. PUDs are an overlay zone that are intended to integrate land uses, buildings, transportation, and open space into a cohesive plan with the goal of allowing creativity and flexibility in site design that could not be achieved with strict adherence to the underlying zoning. So there's an overlay zone on all the properties that you see here. This is the Sherwood Village PUD, this dotted gray outline here. So there's an overlay zone to the underlying zoning, which specifies different uses and sometimes different development standards that new and redevelopment would need to comply with. So this Sherwood Village PUD was originally approved in 1995. There were 8 different phases with different land uses, so just a few of them here: residential, retail, light industrial. So a cohesive plan for all of these properties approved in 1995. There have been various modifications to the PUD throughout the years. And an important note in terms of process, the PUD was approved in 1995, and the PUD standards state that a detailed site plan, or in this case a site plan modification, is required for each phase. So the PUD doesn't go into detail about parking, landscaping, a lot of the details that the development code covers for site planning. So we get the big picture through the PUD, and then prior to construction, they get site plan approval for each individual phase. And so the site that you're looking at tonight is part of Phase 8 of the Sherwood Village PUD. It's outlined here in red. And so the property that you're looking at was first approved as a self-storage building here on Langer Farms Parkway in 2016. So that was the original site plan approval. And then tonight, you're looking at a major modification to that site plan approval. So that's kind of the history of the Sherwood Village PUD. The zoning on the property, as I mentioned, light industrial, and if you were to look at the code today for light industrial zoning, mini warehousing and self-storage is not permitted. However, the staff report indicates that the use is allowed on the site until August 28th, 2022, and kind of a little bit of a complicated land use history, but I'll just summarize it briefly if I can, and that is that self-storage was permitted in the light industrial zone in 1995 when the Sherwood Village PUD was approved. And then in 2012, the western portion of the site was subdivided to create new lots for commercial and industrial development. That subdivision approval in 2012 vested the allowed uses on the site for a period of 10 years pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute 92.040. Basically what that law says is when a subdivision is approved inside an urban growth boundary, that the owner can elect to use the comprehensive plan and zoning designation and uses that were in effect at that time of the subdivision for a period of 12 years. And so we're pushing now right up against that 10-year period, which is now in August 2022. And so the use is vested until August 28th, 2022, based on the land use history and primarily that subdivision that occurred in 2012. Getting into the site plan, let's see, the green here is landscape. Here's Langer Farms Parkway. The green is landscaping. The gray are existing buildings. Here's the existing, or the proposed building that will replace the covered storage area. Pretty straightforward proposal, 3-story self-storage building. This orange here is a covered parking and loading area for the customers to access the building. Elevators are located right there for convenient access. No changes are proposed to the access to the site. The site has an existing driveway off Langer Farms Parkway, so the users would just come in here off the existing driveway and access the site through the existing drive aisle. So as I was mentioning earlier, all of this is currently impervious area, concrete or asphalt and a building, and that will be replaced with a building. So no changes to landscaping or other development standards. And then one note, I just wanted to, before I get into some additional design standards for industrial, I think this is a good slide to reference those design standards. So any new industrial development that's on a collector status road or an arterial status road is required to comply with the city's industrial design standards. And so Langer Farms Parkway is a collector status road. And so buildings within 200 feet of that collector status roadway and visible from the roadway have to comply with the city's industrial design standards. So the original approval in 2016 was subject to those standards, and because this building is within 200 feet of Langer Farms Parkway, it is also subject to those standards. So the staff report has findings for compliance with those standards, but just wanted to explain that on that slide. We also have just our cut and dry development standards related to lot area and setbacks and height. No changes to the lot area on this, but the building does meet the setback and height requirements of the light industrial zone. And then getting into the building design, this image here on the bottom would be the side that's facing Langer Farms Parkway. Here's a material image that shows the materials used, so two different types of concrete block and then metal siding, so 3 different types of building material, and the colors are also here for reference. And here's the detail of those industrial design standards that I was mentioning. So the way this works is if the development is required to comply with those with these industrial design standards, the applicant is required to show conformance with 4 out of 6. So they can choose any 4 out of the 6 and meet the standard. And so in this case, the staff report indicates they're complying with 5 out of the 6 standards. So 2 different types of building material, a maximum setback of 35 feet from the road, parking located to the side or to the rear when viewed from the road, loading to the side or to the rear of the building when viewed from the road, and then roof-mounted equipment screened with complementary building materials. So the only one they were not meeting for the new building was 15% window glazing. And then in terms of public comments, so far we received 1 written piece of testimony. Testimony was in opposition to the project based on the location and design of the building. The staff report did have a response to that comment indicating that the development standards were met for the light industrial zone and also that the building complied with the light industrial design standards. And then a few revisions based on some of the commissioner feedback. Condition of approval E8, this is related to comments from PGE about having the owner or developer contact PGE to coordinate any service upgrades to the electrical panel. So just want to make sure that that gets caught prior to issuance of building permits. And then some additional findings related to the standards for heat and glare. Staff wanted to clarify that the applicant does have a preliminary lighting plan, and it shows that exterior lighting will be attached to the building at a height of 15 feet. The height of the existing storage building along Langer Farms Parkway is at 15 feet. The new lighting will not be visible from the ground floor of the residential neighborhood across Langer Farms Parkway. And then just to further really try and, I guess, protect that residential area from any light impacts of the development. Staff is proposing a voluntary condition of approval related to the lighting, which would be that prior to issuance of building permits, the applicant provide a light fixture detail for the proposed lighting, and the lights shall be directed towards the ground and not towards the residential development across Langer Farms Parkway. So wait to hear from the applicant if they're okay with that voluntary condition. And then just some additional findings around the self-use, and staff wanted to clarify the proposed self-storage use is a light industrial use and conforms to the Sherwood Village PUD standards and conditions of approval. So the staff recommendation for this evening is staff recommends approval of LU 2022-010, subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report dated April 19th, 2022, as revised by this slide. And again, always just want to go back to, your decision this evening should be based on the applicable criteria. If you have any questions on the criteria and the staff findings, happy to go into more detail. And your alternatives for this evening, you can approve the application based on the findings and conditions in the staff report. You can approve the application with revised findings and or conditions, or you can deny the application with revised findings. And I might add, another option would be to continue the hearing to a date certain if more information is needed. That concludes the staff presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions of staff before we call the applicant up to testify? All right.
Chair,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
Just one quick question for you, Eric. Going from its current use to self-storage, is there any change in requirements regarding parking, or is there additional, is there already parking that's available in the pathways between the buildings?
Yeah, good question, Vice Chair Kai, thank you. So the proposal is for parking and loading to be in this orange area here. So it'd be it'd be on the first floor, and my understanding is that this would be covered. So the second floor would, have a cover over that. So the original staff report in 2016 had a finding that indicated the headquarters, if you will, the office for sort of the larger Sentinel storage, business. There's various sites for Sentinel storage, and the main office is at Langer Farms Parkway and Tualatin Sherwood Road. And so if customers, my understanding is that if customers are looking to, meet the person that's going to lease the spaces, they would drive there to that office and then maybe come over here. So in terms of, customers coming to lease, they would go there first. But if they're actually utilizing, once they get signed up, utilizing the self-storage, really there's not a lot of parking that's required because they'll just park outside the storage unit. If it's around here, if they're actually coming to this building, there's 3 stalls there. It's a decent size loading area here. So these would be sized for trucks, but you could also get vehicles in here as well. And so because of that, the original staff report had a finding that no parking was required, and staff concurs with that for this modification.
Okay, thank you.
All right. My opportunity to call on the applicant and their consultant, John Christensen and Marie Holliday. And then we'll have you state your name and address for the record when you start your testimony. And again, you'll probably have to pull your microphone closer to you to be able to be picked up on the recording.
Perfect. Good evening, and thank you for your time, Commissioners. My name is Marie Holliday with AKS Engineering, and for the record, my address is 12965 Southwest Herman Road, Suite 100, Tualatin, Oregon. And I also have John Christensen with AKS here with us.
This project was a culmination of efforts on behalf of the applicants, and again, I'm Marie Holliday with AKS, and we provided the land use planning and civil engineering services for the project. I also have John Christensen and Andreas Collins here this evening, and architectural services were provided by Schmidt Architects. And we do kind of have a hybrid team component this evening, so if there's any architectural questions, our consultant is over Zoom as well. So here's a vicinity map of the site. You can see that the property is outlined with yellow there, located on the east side of Southwest Langer Farms Parkway, south of Southwest Century Drive, and north of Oregon Street. And you can see there that the blue dash line within the yellow property boundary there, that's the limits of the modification this evening. So Eric provided a really in-depth overview of the project, so I'll try and stay brief here. The site plan modification is limited to the existing self-storage facility that's currently operated at 21980 Southwest Langer Farms. The total site area is about 6.14 acres, and the site is zoned light industrial planned unit development. So the extent of the modification is limited to the removal and replacement of the existing RV canopy, and that's about 14,250 square feet. So there on the aerial image, you can see the canopy of the existing RV canopy, and then the yellow dash line is the extent of the modification, which is about 25,000 square feet in area. The existing site improvements, including the access, landscaping, screening, circulation, stormwater management, trash service, site lighting, et cetera, those elements are planned to remain unchanged. Here's an overview of the preliminary site plan. You can see the existing buildings are shown in blue around the perimeter of the site, and the modified building is, again, internal to the site and will be surrounded by existing buildings. So the two existing accesses are planned to remain. The access on the far right is the patron and guest access. The access further to the left there is for emergency vehicles only. The new enclosed storage building is shown there in the middle of the screen. Again, the footprint of the building is just shy of 25,000 square feet. It'll be 3 stories at 75,000 square feet and about 32 feet high. The site plan also involves relocation of a fire hydrant and existing emergency bollards located to the right of the building there. The site plan also involves a new covered loading area, which will be on the ground floor, and that will be covered. You can kind of see there with the green floor there. It's located underneath the building. The plan also involves replacement of pavement that is taken up through the grading process, as well as replacement of the wall-mounted lighting that currently exists on the RV canopy. So currently that lighting is mounted at about 15 feet on the existing canopy, and the plan is to essentially relocate lighting at about the same height, just above the bay doors and the man doors to enter the building. So because the extent of the modification is again limited to the placement of the building, one of the site elements that needed to be considered was adequate circulation. So you can see here that the building footprint does increase again from that 14,000 square feet to about 24,000. And so adequate fire apparatus and emergency vehicle access is provided there. And that's shown there with the yellow circulation. Here's a photograph of the existing facility. So again, here's shown in red are these perimeter buildings around the site. So the building is planned again to be interior of those existing buildings. And this photo is taken from Southwest Langer Farms Parkway and oriented toward the northeast. So you're kind of looking at the far southwest corner all the way through across the site. So here's the conceptual view section of the site plan. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen, Langer Farms Parkway is shown there with the 2 cars. And the existing buildings are about 15 feet high. So when you're standing on the street or along the sidewalk and looking across at the existing building, you'll be able to see about 3 feet of the new building over the top of the existing buildings. And again, that planned building height is 32 feet. And because Southwest Langer Farms Parkway is a collector roadway, the industrial design standards for collector corridors do apply. And so Eric briefly mentioned these throughout. There's about 3 architectural materials planned for the site, including metal siding in various colors that will complement the existing facility, concrete masonry, and then also metal siding and galvanized roofing. And since this facility is already existing and in operation, these architectural materials are just planned to, again, complement the site. Here's a view of the north elevation of the building. So as you're driving up or down Southwest Langer Farms Parkway, you'll be able to see this view. You can see here the ridgeline of the building is about 32 feet. And then there's a man door as well as a roll-up bay door. Because the circulation aisle comes around tight to the building here, there's no individual garage units along the north or south elevations. And here's a south elevation, very similar. And then here are the west and east elevations. Again, you can see that the parking unloading area is on the ground floor, and it'll be covered by the second floor there. And here along the west and east sides are individual roll-up bay doors for patrons to access. Commissioner Kai, I did hear you have a question about parking here, and so the nature of the facility, people generally drive up to the building, they'll roll up their door and load up their vehicle with their belongings. Because all of the rest of the buildings currently on site are 1 story and at the perimeter of the site, parking wasn't found to be necessary. The amount of people who use the site, they can really pull up to their door and load up their vehicle. In this case, the new building will be 3 stories, so it was necessary to provide an area for people to actually fully park their car and not just have it idling next to the building. So there's about three oversized parking stalls that would fit, a U-Haul or a large trailer, which would fit actually a few more passenger vehicles in that area. And then again, the planned site lighting is planned to be mounted again above these roll-up doors and the man doors at approximately 15 feet near where the existing lighting is shown on the RV canopy. And with that said, the applicant concurs with the staff findings and conditions of approval in the staff report, as well as the voluntary condition that was mentioned this evening. And the application as well as the staff report demonstrate the approval criteria are met, and we're available for any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions of the applicant?
Just had one quick one about the covered loading. What was the clearance?
The clearance, I believe, is 16 feet to the roll-up door to the top of that.
Okay, great, thanks.
And then I had a question on the building elevations. You said that we would see that coming from the north or south, but it looks like from the site plan that there's buildings existing on the north and south, so we won't be able to see this building at all unless we're on the site itself. So people driving by, I don't think, are going to be able to see north or south elevations, will they? I was trying to look while I was. Oh yeah, there.
An accident with a car.
If you go back a slide, there's buildings all the way around it, isn't it? So we won't be able to see someone driving by.
Well, as you're driving north or south on Langer Farms, you'll be able to see maybe about 3 feet of a building that's above the existing perimeter buildings. But since there's no other roadways that really transect that area, you'd really only be traveling in the north or south direction.
Right. Okay. And then for the light fixtures themselves, I was just hoping to get a visual on what they were, because sometimes with industrial buildings, they put lights that are facing out and light pollution that goes out. Are these going to be hooded with the light going down?
We do agree to the staff condition to comply with the lighting detail. I don't have one available this evening, but the existing lighting on the facility is wall mounted, and I believe it does have a down shade on it.
Okay.
But
all right.
okay,
that's perfect. That's it. I should have just just, you accepted his condition, that's good. All right, any other questions of the applicant before we call for other public testimony? All right, then, is that 21 minutes left? All right, so you have 21 minutes and 41 seconds available for rebuttal after public testimony. Thank you. So Erica just wanted to confirm my order of operations is if we have anybody calling in to testify, staff would recognize anybody that had made arrangements. Do we have anybody that called ahead to make arrangements to testify remotely?
We do not this evening.
Okay. So then in the audience this evening, we have 2 people signed up. The first is Jim Claus.
Robert James Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. I'm going to hand you a document. I hope you have an attorney, because if you don't have an attorney, you made some legal conclusions. In fact, I will be filing a complaint with the bar against your planner and them. They're wrong. Read the materials we're going to hand you. They are completely wrong. This was a contract, it was signed off, and it's been gone. And a condition in the contract which there's hiding stops this process. Number 2, do you understand we built Langer Parkway Road? We paid for the dirt and we built it. Do you understand in front of this monstrosity, you have 32 feet curb to curb and you have a turn lane in the middle of it. You have no parking. This has no restrooms. It is almost 600 units. It is the size of a small mass merchandiser. This is huge. It is doubling their space in this town. And there is no restroom. I guess they see him as people stream down the street to find a restroom, they'll find intervening opportunities. This brings no employment, and it uses the space. Now, secondarily, when you read the materials we presented you, you would see repeatedly they are misrepresenting the facts of law. They are telling you that these LLCs are the same, Mr. Rutledge tells you. Well, I guess he checked with a different Secretary of State and real estate office than we did, because they are not the same as we're seeing it. And I'd like to see that proof in the document. Now, do you understand what you're doing is giving the Langers on this application hundreds of thousands of dollars. They have no development costs. We paid for the street. We paid, they don't need a water or sewer. We paid for all of that. It came out of the urban renewal grant. And they're now asking to ride in on that retroactively because apparently these small storage spaces make more money. But try to understand, it's on an acre, it's if you've got things in you and you can't calculate it, this is huge. It's but ugly on top of that. There's no landscaping, there's nothing. They're trying to escape from all regulations. And more than that, you have an attorney going back and finding of fact as an urban planner that this is allowable. Our research points out this is signed off with the condition in the development agreement that in 2013, is it, Susie? 2017, it went kaput. It's not there anymore. I don't see any counter. I don't see any extension. Now I want to see some attorneys' opinions before I see that. This is a major no-no for us. It's not adding jobs. We've already built Langer Parkway. We got snookered, in case you don't know, on Home Depot by Clarence Langer and Brennecke. That was put in there illegal. We tried to fight it out and we couldn't. And then ODOT went after some of the citizens that objected to it. They don't now because they know that it was the city that was playing games with the zoning. I can't even make any sense out of this, and I'm a professional in this area. So we prepared this document, Hugh, and suggest that you take the 7 days and read it, and then come back with some questions and make your vote. Because what you have here, I read it as legal opinions. And I'm really surprised at that. I wouldn't stick my neck out far enough to make a legal opinion if I didn't have a case from LUBA that specifically supported what I'm saying. And we've got LUBA cases supporting what we're saying. Take the time to read it. It's opposite of everything this group is saying. Now, my point is, maybe we want to do this, but what do we get out of this? This is, what is it, 7,000? How many square feet is this thing? 74,000. That's an acre and a half. That's Target under roof. And they're telling you that that's a collector street at that point? No, it's not. It has a turn lane in the middle and no park lanes. You put park lanes on it, you couldn't drive down it. It's 32 feet, curb to curb. If they want to put in something like this, it's going to bring trucks and bring no employment into the area because they're going to feed off of the others. What do we get out of it? Now, excess land value, yes. In Walmart, we stood aside and got the excess land value, and it allowed us to pay off the bonds and give away this apartment building over here. What are we getting out of this? Nothing. You're just botching the town up with a butt-ugly building that meets the Langer's needs for money. And you don't have legal opinions on this. Judge Soper can't give them to you because he works for the city council, and I caught him screwing around with the urban renewal district, and he had to recuse himself. You need to get outside legal counsel to find out if these conclusions are right. Other than that, let him go to LUBA. I do not understand what we're doing in this town when we're doing this. We changed the central business district and ruined it. This was a true CBD town. We have not cleaned up the cannery pollution. Guess why? Langer Parkway. We haven't done any of this building, and nobody's asking any hard questions. Read the brief. It took a lot of time. We spent a lot of time. I'm 82 years old and I'm ill. I didn't have the time to do this, but I took the time because somebody's pulling another swift move, in my opinion.
Susan Claus?
Susan Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. In one of the documents there that Jim submitted, he asked for a continuance in the record to be at least left open for written additional new information for the record. And I'm asking the same also. Part of what they're talking about, they keep talking about there was a vesting, and then they also cite an ORS statute. The contract that they're relying on is a contract, if you look at Exhibit A, page 1 of their amended and restated development contract, the parties to this amended and restated development agreement are the City of Sherwood, number 1, Pamela and Clarence Langer as to Phase 4, which is the original Sentinel storage phase, and the Langer Family LLC as to the remainder of the PUD collectively. Okay? Those are the parties to the agreement. That's one issue. The applicant, just because, here's what I want to say. Just in general, we have to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. A Langer isn't a Langer, isn't a Langer, isn't a Langer, isn't a Langer, isn't a Langer. Because one part of their business may want to do something, it doesn't give them the right to come in on an agreement that was very specifically tailored toward Pam and Clarence on Phase 4 for the Sentinel Storage Phase 4 original, not even the annex area. And then the Langer Family, or Langer Farms LLC, Langer Family LLC. So that is an issue that has to be taken care of. this, I'm going to submit this to the record. This is a copy of a lot of their LLCs. You can't tell hide nor hair, really, of who is what and what is what. And just because we have one agreement doesn't mean that all of these people get to participate and then claim that they have a vesting. So please, we're asking that question because we don't know, and it's not clear in the record. The applicant hasn't disclosed it to us. They're talking about Langer Storage 2 as the owner of this property. Well, that's not Clarence and Pam Langer, and that's not Langer Family LLC. That's a different business entity. So you can't, they're asking for something that's not legal on that anymore with the current code. It wasn't even legal. And they're trying to go back to a 27-year-old code. So please, we need to find out what that is, number one, because this request might not even have the advantage of this agreement. And this agreement, we're also making the argument, this agreement ended January 1st, 2017. That says this is the current agreement in use. They had a termination date. We're in 2022, and they're trying to bootstrap an ORS statute that doesn't apply, but it may look like it applies, but we don't even have an attorney's opinion, what Jim is saying. You have one planner talking to the other planner saying, hey, you know, it looks good. And we even had Erica nodding her head the whole time when Eric was giving his presentation about, is this still good? Is the vesting still good? We don't know if it's good. We don't have it in the record. We don't have that information. And we have additional information that we want to submit to the record. And okay. So please, I request that. Yeah, and let me get this in the record, and then,
Do we get the 7 days before you vote?
yeah.
And then we have 14 days to take it up to council.
Yeah, and then just, this is a procedural thing.
Right.
What is this process? Because we don't even think this is the right process, this type 4 or whatever. But whatever this process you have this application in, what is the appeal process? And what is that? What does that look like? It's different. I mean, I heard you say, Jean, that it goes up to the city council, but what are the deadlines, and when is the document, you know, when would be the appeal document due? Like in Luba, there's a 21-day notice that you want to appeal, but the actual document isn't due till a later time. So we don't even know what that is. And
Okay.
yeah, and I tried to talk to staff earlier, and you know, when there's only 7 days for a report and 2 of those days are a weekend, you're always under the gun. And you know, 500 pages is a lot to read from the applicant, and then you've got also the staff report. So I'm going to submit this, and then please, we'd like the record held open.
Okay, so you were submitting a packet of information, and that's going to be labeled, is that D7?
So it would be good if we can just clarify exactly, we don't want to miss anything. So if you can clarify.
Oh, yeah, because there's other
Because
exhibits. So
we've received, it looks like 1 packet, 2 packets, and then is this 3?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so this one, this is just my, excuse me. This is just me writing down, please keep the record open continue it for 14 days, and at least keep the record open for 7 days for written comments.
Understood.
That's just this little.
That's the official request for continuance.
Yeah, exactly, I didn't know what to do. And then this is a totally separate packet, it's the only one I had because it's just legit.
Right, and so we have,
It's just a logistical packet of a whole bunch of LLCs, like probably 40, 30, I don't know.
Okay,
It's
so-
not even all of it. Like I said, we want to submit more information for the file.
okay, so we have a 2-page document that was submitted by Jim,
Uh-huh.
and then another document, I don't know if it's, yeah,
I think it's about 52 pages, double space.
mostly
Don't quote me
double-sided.
on that. Anyway,
Yep, and so that's the packet number 2, and then there's a 3rd packet that's being submitted into the record, which is the combination of the LLC documents that you're submitting.
And
then-
ownership, yeah.
and
And ownership
ownership.
for the two parcels, the Phase 4 parcel and then the phase that is on for this one,
Okay,
for this property that's in question right now. So they're two different ownerships also.
okay.
First one, we'll go back to the court hearing process. You have the big brief in front of you to look at, and then you have, but only down as many of the LLCs.
Chair Simpson.
We can't find anything.
Yeah,
It may not even exist.
Okay, so that's what
Yeah,
these
yeah,
documents are.
This is the brief, this is the technical thing of why we believe that there is no vesting and there is, it's already expired because of the agreement has expired.
Okay,
And anyway, and it's got all the citations. So anyway, thank you very much. And then that one little page is just the formal written request in addition to his, just please keep the record open.
okay.
Thank you
got
very
it.
much.
All right, so the first question that was asked, or not the first, but the question regarding the process, this is our first evidentiary hearing, so there will be a continuance, and we will continue it to, if the commission agrees to a date certain, which is our next hearing date, which I think is the 10th.
Yep, May 10th.
May 10th, sorry. So, but the question was asked regarding the appeal process and what are the steps. So, because I would like you to technically answer, because I want to make sure we have the correct dates about the continuance to May 10th. The Planning Commission would then, because we are continuing to a date certain, keep the record open and accept testimony at our May 10th hearing. And,
Chair Simpson,
yes,
is that under the 777 process?
that would continue it to the second meeting in May. Just keeping the record open and continuing it to May 10th is, because our May 24th meeting night is already full.
Yeah, I understand that.
We're
I'm just looking
doing a
at.
regular continuance to May 10th.
Okay.
So that if you could,
Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, the motion sheet.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So, yeah, just, I think this slide will help clarify things. So we're at April 26th right now. We would continue to a date certain of May 10th, leave the record open throughout that 2-week period and accept public testimony at May 10th. Based on the 120-day deadline, assuming there's no extension of that 120-day deadline, Planning Commission would need to issue a decision in 2 weeks on May 10th. We would issue the notice of decision the next day on May 11th, and that would set us up for a potential appeal with City Council on June 21st. But for those providing testimony this evening who may be interested in the notice of decision, so we would, I believe, have to get this out on May 11th, and then since you provided testimony, we would send that notice to the address that you provided, and once the notice of decision is issued on the 11th, you have a 2-week appeal period. So your appeal period window would be May 11th to May 26th.
so that if someone who testified,
25th.
either someone who provided written testimony or testified this evening wants to appeal the notice of decision that's made on May 11th, they would have to submit something by 5 o'clock on May 26th.
I think 25th, so May 11th plus 14 days, I think
May
is actually the 25th, right?
25th.
Yeah, and then this 26th is our internal date for getting notice out on an appeal. So May 11th to May 25th would be the 2-week appeal period window.
Is that just a notice to appeal, or do you have to have the appeal document?
We
So-
would need to receive the appeal document by May 25th, 2022.
5 PM, May 25th.
5 p.m.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So that's the process to appeal, and the appeal on this planning commission decision would go to city council. So
Yep.
we have so the rebuttal from the applicant is 30 minutes this evening. We will have, the record will be open, and we will take testimony at the May 10th hearing. And so at that time, the applicant will have, the hearing script will be the same. The applicant will have the same time, and persons testifying will have the same opportunity to testify again. So you do have an opportunity to rebut at this time, which is the 21 minutes, and you can put anything else on the record or ask any questions. So if the applicant would like to come back and use their rebuttal time at this time.
Hello, this is Marie Holliday with AKS Engineering, for the record, and the applicant will just respectfully wait for the deliberation and the next hearing through the continuance, and we appreciate your time this evening.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions for the applicant or the staff before we have a motion for the?
Procedurally, we're okay right now? We're at everything? Okay.
Procedurally, we've dotted i's and crossed t's, and all we need is a continuance motion.
Do we need the applicant to agree to extend the 120-day tolling period? We don't, okay.
They can choose to do it if they want to, but because this is the first evidentiary hearing, the continuance is, it is what it is. It happens, irregardless of whether the applicant wants the extension and wants to toll 120 days.
And we are keeping the hearing open as well as the record, correct?
Correct, because
Okay.
it's continued to a date certain.
Okay. So, unless there's anything else I can, I'm
Nope,
prepared to
we're
make a
ready
motion.
for a motion.
I move the Sherwood Planning Commission continue the public hearing on the application for major modification to site plan Sentinel Storage 2, case file LU 2022-004, until May 10th, 2022.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we continue LU 2022-004, major modification to site plan Sentinel Storage 2 to May 10th. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So just for clarity for those that are watching, this is a continued hearing, and the record is open, and anybody has the opportunity to submit written testimony, or they can come and testify before the commission at our next hearing. So, everything's open. All right, that is that. And did you have a thumb drive that is in the computer? Okay, didn't want you to run away without it. Thank you very much for coming. And all right. I know the next item on the agenda is Erica, so I was going to give you a moment to gather your thoughts and do what you need to do before we put you on the hot seat.
Anybody want anything?
Want a snack or a glass of
There's-
water?
Granola bars, Cheez-Its, Nutter Butters, Oreos, Mountain Mix.
I Cheez-Its. Can I just have my microphone on while I eat them?
There you go.
I just turned mine off.
Cheetos down here on the end.
Oh, no, I'm good. They're yours now.
Okay.
All right, Miss Erica, you are next on the agenda with an update on the Sherwood West Concept Plan Relook Project Update.
Great, so good evening, Commissioners. Tonight, I'm going to present an update to the Sherwood West Concept Plan. As you know, or maybe you don't know, and this is why I'm giving this update, about this new update to the preliminary concept plan that was done in 2016. And so tonight's update, I'm going to talk about what is Sherwood West, in case many of you don't know about where Sherwood West is, how it came about, why we are updating the 2016 Sherwood West preliminary plan, where we're at in the process, and then I'll discuss and go over some of the plan concept themes that we've been discussing throughout this process and kind of what the next steps are. So what is Sherwood West? So Sherwood West is around 1,200 acres in size, and it is one of Sherwood's 4 designated urban reserve areas. And our urban reserve areas are places where Sherwood is expected to grow over the next, 50 plus years. And so these areas include our Tonkin Employment area, which is right over here. You can see my cursor. We have Sherwood North, which is this little area just north of like the Home Depot site across from Highway 99 there. And then we have Sherwood South, which is south of Brookman Road in the Brookman area. And then we have Sherwood West. And Sherwood West is bounded by Chapman along Highway 99. This little inlet square, that's actually the new high school site that was brought into the UGB for that school's construction. And then Sherwood West goes all the way up north to Shoals Sherwood Road and Roy Rogers. And it's kind of bounded by Elbert, that north-south arterial street. So Sherwood West has been, identified for new development because it's close to infrastructure, and it's the most logical direction for Sherwood to grow over the next, 50-year period. Sherwood, we're required to have a 20-year land supply for housing and employment uses. And so with our last H&A update that we did,
Housing needs analysis.
Housing needs analysis, thank you, that we did, we are roughly short around 600 housing types or housing units in Sherwood. And so we need to ask ourselves, are we going to grow denser within the existing city boundary, or are we going to grow out a bit into these growth areas? Every 6 years, Metro, the regional government does an urban growth report to look at the region's land supply to see whether or not the region is short on housing and employment uses and where the region, ought to grow. It is anticipated that since we are short in housing, during the next UGB cycle, which is in 2024, the City Council may or may not take this opportunity to ask for an urban growth expansion. But if we do ask for an urban growth expansion, we have to develop a plan for the area. That's number one. And the city, back in 2016, produced kind of a preliminary plan, and this is an update to that plan because some things have changed in the area. So why are we updating this preliminary plan? Our city council, their goals have changed since that time. The 2016 preliminary plan really focused on residential housing. It didn't have a lot of employment or commercial areas in that plan. Our council is really kind of focused on creating a better balance of housing and employment uses in Sherwood. And so revisiting this plan, we can create more opportunities for employment uses. I do want to say, not only has council's goals have changed, those goals are also reflected in our new adopted comprehensive plan when we talk about employment uses in Sherwood and how we want to have a better housing to employment balance within the city. We know growth is happening. Growth is happening around the region. Growth is happening in Sherwood. And since growth is happening, the best course of action is to look at this area and plan it for the long-term uses. We know that the Sherwood High School was recently built in this area. That high school wasn't reflected in that exact location back in the 2016 preliminary plan. And also there's been updates to different transportations plan. We have the Urban Reserve Transportation Study out of Washington County, and then the updated Brookman plan as well. Also, as you know, there's new state legislation. We have House Bill 2001 that we're trying to look at and coordinate into our planning efforts. So where are we at in this planning process? So last year we received a grant from Metro to relook at the preliminary concept plan. We formed a technical and a community advisory committee. Our community advisory committee is made up of 16 members from the Sherwood community, and Chair Simpson is also part of the CAC. We just had our 8th meeting, and we're in the process of developing some land use scenarios to take out to the community for feedback and input. And we anticipate this plan to be complete by the end of this year.
Just 2022.
Oh, 2022, thank you. Come on, we don't want to go backwards here.
It's already done.
The Sherwood West vision. So the CAC took a look at the vision that was completed in 2016 and just did some minor updates to that vision to really focus on that we want to create, high-paying jobs in the area, and we want to create more jobs in this area and as the city as a whole to expand our tax base to really protect and maintain our great quality of life that we have here and all the programs that we have for the parks and the library and whatnot. So we have 6 theme concepts for this plan area, and I'm just going to highlight or discuss each of these theme areas. So we have mixed employment, and we have great neighborhoods, livable and connected streets, the Southeast Elbert Road Design Concept, active transportation, and the Chicken Creek Greenway. So we have really kind of been focusing on these mixed employment areas in the plan and where they should be located and what types of employment could be located in these areas. And we are not talking about, smokestacks or, high impact industrial uses. We are really talking about professional, uses with offices, some light industrial and flex space that would be, professional services and healthcare. We went out and we did a lot of stakeholder interviews in the region, and we talked to developers, we talked to healthcare folks, we talked to folks in the wine industry as well to see to get a better vision of trends that are happening in the area and the mix of businesses that could be provided. So So really, again, we're looking at, high-tech, tech parks, office parks, healthcare facilities, wine-related uses and distribution. And these cut sheets, I do want to make note that they are on the city's project page as well. So anybody, if you're at home and you want to look at these cut sheets, you can
And zoom in.
zoom in online. And I just want to preface here that this map in this draft theme area kind of shows where those mixed employment uses could be located.
And can we preface it with that the CAC itself has given direction at the last meeting, so some of these numbers and blobs will
Yes.
change.
I was just about to say
Okay.
that. Exactly. So some of these blobs and some of these acreages have changed, and they continue to change. This is the process. But we were kind of focusing in that northern area near Sherwood and Roy Rogers, and some areas to the south along south of Kruger and along Highway 99 between Chapman Road.
Are those areas that you just mentioned along Highway 99, are those still visioned to be commercial shopping centers, or is that changing to different uses?
So, right now in the plan we're talking about, it could be healthcare, it could be small retail, it could be multi-tenant space, office parks, kind of I'll get to the next steps. But once a concept plan is completed and an area or a portion of this area is brought into the UGB, that's when we kind of get into the more nuts and bolts. Exactly what is the zoning? What is the zoning going to be, and what are those particular uses that will be applied? So this concept plan is very high level. So when we talk about neighborhoods in Sherwood West, we have some principles. We want to plan for walkability. We want to plan for a variety of housing types. We want to integrate the new neighborhoods with the existing neighborhoods. We want to plan for parks and schools, and we want to have a great network of trails as well.
So that area in the west area, Kruger, Chapman and all that, that's fairly, vineyards and forests and two-lane roads. And so what you're talking about is changing a lot of that from what it is now. Is that correct?
Correct, over time. Over
So
time.
there's a lot of private property up there that's fairly large?
Yes, and so my very last slide talks about process, and I think what you're getting at, Commissioner Lampros, is how does development occur over time? And those properties, so property owners, right now, they're in Washington County. When they are brought into the UGB, they're still in Washington County with Washington County zoning. They wouldn't have city zoning until they applied for city annexation. And when annexation occurs, that is when the city boundary is expanded and they are applied more urban zoning, so they could, develop at urban densities.
So this is not currently served as a city area?
Is correct.
So you're hoping to become that way in the future?
Possibly, or when, property owners want
Wants to be annexed.
want to be annexed, because we don't force anybody to annex into the city.
Might be a hard thing.
Great
You know.
question. Great question. So this area, like I said, has changed through recent CAC meetings, but it shows kind of, where neighborhoods could be located west. So So we're making sure that, you know, all of the neighborhoods, planned neighborhoods in Sherwood West are connected to neighborhood parks and natural areas. And one of the biggest theme items that I hear about here in Sherwood is how people love their trails. Updating the Parks and Recreation Master Plan last year, that was the number one comment that we heard from the community. We want more parks and trail opportunities. So we are making sure that there is a comprehensive trail network within this plan area. And again, this cut sheet just shows the different, you know, housing types. And then we want to make sure that we have a good connected transportation network out in this area that not only connects existing Sherwood to Sherwood West, but it has a great circulation network within it in itself. So our principles for our transportation network and our street connectivity is that we want to design for safety. Safety is the number one factor. We want the streets to be places for all people that are all ages and all abilities, and we want to provide the opportunity for all modes of travel, from bicyclists to pedestrians, to all different modes. So this map right here, and once again, these maps have kind of morphed over the past couple of months. And when we get to the open house here in the next couple of months in early summer, the public, the community will have, you know, 2 different scenarios to look at and to review and to provide comment on. And probably a final preliminary plan will kind of be a mixture of the comments that we receive from the public. But this map really shows the kind of a draft transportation network within Sherwood West. So we have Elwert coming up here. This is the preferred approach for Elwert, and that it would be rerouted going north, and it would bridge over Chicken Creek with 2 roundabouts, and then head north to Sherwood. Hanley Road would be extended going west into these new neighborhoods just west of the high school. And then we are also, which is not shown on this map, are just talking about another north-south collector somewhere along this western edge of the boundary line. And this map right here just shows another alternative of just keeping Elwert in its current location. But like I said, the preferred approach from the CAC is for that realignment of Elwert.
Couple of questions on that. In the preferred approach, would the existing section of Elwert then be shut down or terminated? That's going to be rerouted to the existing portion? Or, so if you go back a slide or two,
Yeah.
you reroute it from the north-south and it goes away from the current intersection. So with that current intersection,
Right here.
with that section, the section north of that, actually, north of Edie, from that section would be terminated?
That is an excellent question, and that's something we're looking into, but it could possibly serve as a local road.
Is it a city road, a county road? Once annexation happens, does that change that?
So right now, it's a county road. It's maintained by Washington County, Elwert. But we have talked about early on through this process is for the city to take on the jurisdictional authority for Elwert to make some of these changes happen.
What's the
because of the grade at Elward and Edie is so extreme, to be able to make the intersection work, you'd have to do some sort of overpass type situation, or the grading would have to be extreme to get it out of the hole that it's in.
These intersection?
Yes.
Okay, it's not a percent.
Yeah, it's a pretty steep grade to the bottom of it.
Our kids like it, they come on a roller coaster when they go down it.
Yeah.
I ride my bike on it a lot. You go fast down, slow up.
Yeah, yeah, and so by moving the alignment, you take out that's part of the safety issue, is because you don't have sight visibility, and that intersection is if it gets more traffic in it, it's even more dangerous. Yeah.
Moving on to our Southwest Elbert Road design concept. We went out to the committee and we asked, what roads do you like in Sherwood? And oftentimes the number one road that we hear that, people really, they like is Sunset, and kind of the design principles along Southwest Sunset. And so we are taking kind of what we have learned from Sunset Boulevard, and we're going to apply it, or would like to apply it to Elwert as it extends up to Sherwood. So that would include, adding our buffered sidewalks and bike lanes, having our, different paths, come out to the sidewalk that you could take into, different subdivisions. We want to make sure that we have a great tree canopy along Elbert. I think Sunset is like, there's so many photos during the fall of Sunset. Possibly, creating that consistent that fence line that people like, that creates that extra buffer as well. And we would just want to make sure that Elbert becomes a safe road for all users. And so when we design it, we want to design it in that context-sensitive approach. So this map shows, how Elbert, this part is really the gateway into Sherwood West. We have a residential boulevard that really would reflect the design elements of Southwest Sunset. We have some green crossings over Chicken Creek. And then we want to make sure, as we get into the employment area to the north, that, the street, maintains, the visual corridor design that we currently have here in Sherwood. We want to make sure that there's, fewer curb cuts for safety. And we also want to think about, truck turning considerations as well. So we want to design the road for all the different users and the different land uses that surround the roadway. And we want to plan for active transportation within Sherwood West. And once again, that active transportation is looking at our trail system, where those trails could be located, how they could connect to neighborhoods, how they can really connect to our Chicken Creek Greenway, which I'm going to be talking about here, and also how those trails and sidewalks connect to existing Sherwood as well, and to the nature refuge. Right here we see all those different modes of travel that we're thinking about. So green spaces for Sherwood West. One of the things that I have found interesting, and I didn't make a slide for this, but we've done a preliminary buildable lands analysis for Sherwood West, where we have, taken out all of our natural areas and areas that would be preserved. And it comes out to almost being 40% of the Sherwood West area.
Because it's in floodplains, riparian corridors that are not allowed to be developed in.
And one of those areas is our Chicken Creek Greenway. And we are really thinking about how this greenway could be a great linear park corridor for the community to use. So elements of a greenway, it could provide access to nature, stormwater management. Of course, we would have some multi-use paths through that area, and it really just kind of becomes this centerpiece for Sherwood West, that greenway. Some other communities that have used greenways, there's Spano Creek Greenway in the region. There's the Stoller Creek Greenway up in Bethany. So next steps to complete the concept plan here. So the CAC, they're looking at different land use scenarios right now. Like I said, we just had our 8th meeting. We are headed into our 9th meeting, most likely in late May, early June. Once they give the thumbs up on a couple land use scenarios, we are planning on a community-wide open house. It will be in person, crossing our fingers that nothing changes, and also online. And then once again, we will be seeking input from our high school students on the plan to get their input on the future of Sherwood. So after we get this community feedback, a preferred land use scenario will be selected, and then additional analysis will be reviewed. We'll be looking again at transportation, and then our infrastructure funding, which will kind of tell us like how should we phase development in Sherwood West over time. There's been community engagement at every step in this process. People are welcome to provide comments at our CAC and TAC meetings. They're welcome to provide comments to staff. We did a community-wide survey last fall and got feedback on some of these draft concepts and the vision. And we expect updated concept plan to be complete by winter 2022. So got that date right in here. I just actually recently met with some community members who live in the Mandel Farm subdivision. I've been kind of doing these small coffee clutches with neighbors who are really interested in learning more about this project, who don't necessarily want to provide comments at meetings, and it's a little more one-on-one and friendly with folks. What I am learning, and this from people, is that they're really interested in what's the timeline of development. And Greg, I think you were kind of getting at this through your comments. This is a long process. Development, can take quite a long time to occur over time. So the first step really is to create this concept plan. The second step is, if Metro decides to expand the UGB, they will look at different areas, and Sherwood will need to decide whether or not we want to ask for a UGB expansion, and so that would occur in 2024. If a portion or all of Sherwood West is brought into the UGB, then there's additional planning that happens. That's when we really get into the nuts and bolts of how do we zone this area.
Can you scroll the slide down so we can see the numbers that are at the bottom? Maybe.
And that refinement process, can take anywhere to 1.5 years to 3+ years to happen. And then once we have zoning set in place for that area, then property owners who meet, the city's annexation criteria could ask to go through the annexation process to be brought into the city boundary. So we expect that we will have updated our annexation policies and procedures by that time and have some additional annexation criteria in our code as well. And so just an annexation application in itself can take about 6 months to process.
So the orange box, when Metro's making its decision, is 2024, right?
Correct.
Would they make the decision by that date?
Yes, by
They have to have
state
it,
statute.
they have to have it completed by 2024. And so the decision to expand,
So the decision to expand the UGB will probably take place in late 2003, 2024.
okay. And then our refinement plan could potentially be done as soon as 2025, 26. And then someone comes in with an expansion in 2026 and break end of 2026, and then they go through development, which is
Our land use review process.
so
Correct.
2027. If everything fast tracked and everything hit the way it could be, we'd be breaking ground those 2026 to 2027. If all the pieces fell into place without delay. There's no school coming in. So the school is part of the
School is
is
part
part
of
of the
our
CAC, and their expectation is within the Sherwood West phased approach after urban growth boundary expansion occurs and development occurs, they have capacity for 10 years of development without adding any schools. And so they're thinking that they're phase 10 years out before they're looking at an elementary and middle school in that area someplace.
So they have that much excess capacity.
They have that much capacity in the school, within the community, however they divvy up the students, that they would not need to add any schools within the next 10 years of development within the city of Sherwood based on how many houses would be coming in the phases that.
Is that something that's changed in the last few years? I remember it being capped after the high school went through.
That is student capacity, not bond capacity. The bond capacity is a different answer.
And now that was what kind of played a major role in the last look at the expansion.
Yeah, and Mr. Rose has not addressed the bonding part of that. He was just looking at student capacity and because we were in the role that CAC is looking is how much land needs to be set aside, and an elementary school takes 10 acres and a middle school takes 25 to 30 acres, and so we're not thinking about how much money it's going to cost. It's whether and where to set aside parcels of land.
A couple of quick questions. On the Metro decision in 2024, I assume there'd be three options: is yes, no, or some of these parts. Would that be correct? And then we're lobbying Metro, I assume, for whoever our representative, his name is slipping me right now, forgive me, I can't remember his name, but we're lobbying him, making sure he's on board with this plan.
That is a great question. We speak to Washington County, staff. They're part of our technical advisory committee. People around the region know that we're updating the preliminary plan that we did in 2016. I think the Sherwood City Council, they're going to have to make a decision on whether or not a portion of Sherwood West is brought into the UGB, or all of it, or none at all. They're kind of the final decision makers on making this request.
So Metro may decide to expand the urban growth boundary, but the city of Sherwood has to request to have the residential type expansion occur in our neighborhood.
Is there ever a vote of the citizenry, or does this ever go to vote?
not the way it happened last time. It was council decision.
And ultimately, so
That's
So-
cute.
I do want to take a step back though. So city council, they may decide, to bring in a portion of Sherwood West or all of Sherwood West, but we make that application to Metro. And then, Metro really has the final say on whether or not this land is brought into the EGB or not.
What was the deficit in the housing needs analysis? I'm sorry, you said at the beginning, but I don't remember.
Yeah, so our deficit right now for housing units is a little over 600 units.
And how is the deficit determined?
Great question, Greg.
From a layman's perspective, it's a formula. It's a formula reading tea leaves that says how many houses are we gonna build based on growth projections over the next 20 years.
But your growth projections have to say we're gonna expand out, or we're gonna stack each other on top of each other, right?
Right. So we have to accommodate that growth and we have to have land for.
Why do we have to accommodate?
We have to accommodate
State
that
law.
housing per our
Because
state,
it's
our
state.
state housing goal.
Well, when you say accommodate, I think the difference is we have to plan for it. Doesn't mean that we have to necessarily make it happen, so we have to.
Provide opportunity.
Correct.
Exactly.
But some of those numbers get changed when you look at House Bill 2001. There are redevelopment and infill that may provide more housing and more density than what we've developed historically. So we may or may not have more than or less than a 600 unit deficit if people start putting in duplexes or something else through the HB 2001 option. So it's a crystal ball. A tough nut to swallow, huh?
Are there any final questions? I plan to come back to the planning commission over the next couple of months with the preferred scenario and the input that we heard from our community open house.
So next step involved that this is a preliminary concept plan that is going through a citizen advisory committee. We'll go out to the public and do public outreach, and then there will be hearings in front of the city planning commission and then city council for adoption. So we will see the final object draft concept plan, and we'll make a recommendation as a planning commission to the city council whether or not the goals and objectives in the concept plan are in alignment with the city and with state rules. Which, thankfully, Eric is going to keep us updated on what's going on in Sherwood West.
Yes.
And there's a project page.
There is. So if you go to the city's website and if you just search for Sherwood West concept plan, it should pop up. If you're home this evening, you can actually scan this little QR code and the project page will pop up as well.
Yeah, we got high tech with our little QR code. So it's very big project. There's a lot of active citizens, and then there's a technical advisory committee that meets in the afternoon before the citizen advisory committee meets in the evening to go over some of the like the nuts and bolts of transportation, water, sewer, some of the other logistics that have to occur. And the partner agencies are part of the PAC that help direct this project. So. All right. Thank you, Erica. So we have our next agenda item is commissioner comments. As I was driving here this evening, I got to thinking, do we have contact information for commissioners and do you personally have emergency contacts if something were to happen at this meeting this evening or any other planning commission meeting, how to get a hold of someone besides dialing 911 to get, you know.
You guys fill anything out when you come on board?
We don't have an emergency contact
Yeah.
I was just thinking if I trip and fall on the way out.
I will tell you a story. I had a sales rep years ago that broke his ankle. He was going to the doctor, following along the field, stepped in a hole and broke his other ankle.
Oh no.
So he had to come to work in a wheelchair for quite a while.
I was just thinking if something happened to one of us, how would we get a hold of the person that needs to know that something happened to one of us?
I was thinking of your foot.
Yeah. I was thinking about that when I have to get out to my truck and get in my car and drive home tonight that
We got your back, don't worry.
yeah. I know Colleen knows how to get me to my doorstep, but you know, leaving me on the doorstep might not work. Any other commissioner comments before we adjourn this evening?
I only had a question on this, the case of the poison wildlife refuge. What was talked about? What was that about?
So that was the
Hand up to Klaus, wasn't it?
that was the testimony or the citizen comment that was provided, and so when
From Mr. Klaus?
yes,
He was bringing this up?
yes, and that was his testimony. That's what he was talking about. And so because we don't provide because the public wasn't notified, we can't have a discussion regarding the item. If we choose to bring it back, oftentimes like Susan's comment this evening about our noticing on the top of the agenda, we'll, you know, direct staff to make sure that the top of that is really clear that people can come in person and testify. But anything else would have to be added as an agenda item before we can discuss it or deliberate on it, because it's we're a quorum and we're a public body. So in order for us to take an action, we would need to put a public notice out.
Which accounts for this document that we didn't discuss.
Correct. Yeah, and the other items that were submitted this evening are part of this application that's continued to the 24th, and we'll deliberate on that. And it's a good opportunity, if you have questions on it, that you can reach out to Eric, and he will be our point of contact for any questions related to the continued hearing.
Yeah, I'll just say on any of the land use applications, if I'm the planner on it, which I'll be on most of them, reach out to me, email, phone, come stop by, maybe schedule something if you want to stop by in person, but email or phone, I'm available. We can answer questions without the issue of ex parte contact. So if you have questions, definitely reach out to me. Concerns that you want to raise prior to the hearing, reach out to me. Happy to field those before the actual meeting.
There was the two packets that we got copies of. There was a third that was submitted into the record. Is that going to be part of like what we get back before the next hearing will be added?
Yeah, we'll include all of that as part of the record. So we may release something, you know, if we do release anything from staff, it would likely be 7 days before the next hearing. So a week from today, we would release something if we do. We may not, but that would be, if not, then at a minimum, all of this will be in the packet that goes out to you. So you'll get it in a digital and probably paper copy as well.
Because it's a continued hearing, oftentimes, because evidence is being brought forth at the hearing, it's hard to do a staff report when you don't know what the evidence is going to be at the hearing. So that might also, since we're in person, it might be an opportunity for actually to take a 10-minute break. And it's hard to do that on a Zoom meeting, but. So. All right, any other commissioner comments before we adjourn?
For tonight's material, Steph, should we give everything back to you as far as the binder as packet?
No, I know. Hold on to it, and we'll include all of this again to you likely as part of the next agenda packet, and then if there's anything else, we'll add it. But I don't anticipate the staff report is going to change substantially that we would reissue it. So just, yeah, hold on to it.
Yep.
Yep.
Hold on to it and bring it back in 2 weeks.
Yep. This is where all the paper comes in, but yes, it'll add up quickly, so. Yeah, so does everyone have those 2 copies?
So we,
Okay, so we could probably omit that from the
so
paper
the
delivery.
commissioners that are not here this evening will need the packets that we were handed. And then there was one packet that was not copied to us, that Susan had one copy and she provided, and that'll be copied and distributed to
Yep,
us before the next meeting.
you'll get this one, yep.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Really nice. Really like that.